Welcome to video number 2 in my Azure Active Directory Identity series. Last video we talked about introduction to Azure AD. This time we're going to talk about how we can use it to connect your workforce to any app. And if you remember, there's 4 pillars in Azure Active Directory. Now, when we talk about connecting your workforce to any app, I'm really talking about 3 different things. Centralizing your management of all your apps from the cloud using a single pane of glass. And then giving your users an amazing end user experience to streamline their access to those apps using single sign-on. And then improving the ability for users to go out and do self-service and discover those apps with their own access. Now, Azure AD simplifies the way you manage those apps. And again, it provides that single identity system for cloud-based apps, SaaS apps, even on-premises apps. And when you think about this, it's also integrating with your HR systems to do identity lifecycle management, and then also integrating with legacy Windows Server Active Directory, again, providing that single pane of glass here. And this provides a ton of security that we'll get more into in some other videos, but this is what we talk about as identity as a control plane and managing it from a single location. Now, while we see the explosion of SaaS apps out there, a lot of organizations, maybe even yours, still have a hybrid environment, and you have to manage many of these legacy on-premises apps that simply cannot be modernized. And so to make it easier to connect any application to Azure AD, like those on-premises apps, there's solutions like Azure Active Directory App Proxy that can then publish those apps securely and then allow you to access those apps remotely without a VPN. That's amazing. And then there's integrations with some networking companies out there like Akamai and Ariaka and Citrix and F5 and Zscaler that adds even more capabilities there. And with those deep integrations, you can simplify that secure access to those apps. And it could be header-based or Kerberos or using other legacy authentication protocols. And so Azure AD App Proxy is a feature of Azure Active Directory that supports single sign-on, and it enables those users to access those on-prem apps without a VPN from anywhere, at any time, from any device. So now you can centralize that access management to all the applications with Azure AD and then leverage those benefits. So providing like a zero trust architecture to those apps. That's pretty cool. Now, we're making it easier. Microsoft is making it easier to connect on-premises apps like Azure AD, like through Azure AD App Proxy. But then when we talk about SaaS-based apps, software as a service, there's the Azure AD App Gallery that includes thousands and thousands of pre-integrated apps. It's like an app store. You go out there and you launch it, and it's pre-integrated. And within a matter of minutes, you're up and running, like one-click SSO. And then for apps that aren't in there, if you reach out to Microsoft, they will actually explore looking at the app and adding it. And I'll talk more about that here in just a moment. And so when you think about single sign-on, your users, they then have access to any of those apps that are integrated with Azure AD using a single credential. And then that reduces the dependency on duplicate passwords and all those things, which leads to identity-based attacks. And as we know, passwords and identity is one of the most popular attack vectors. Now, for those additional integrations that I mentioned, go out to aka.ms/Azure AD App Request, and Microsoft will explore getting that added for you. Now, your organization probably has many different apps, and I'm sure the number keeps growing, and it's a lot harder for your users to find those apps, and it's a lot harder for you to manage it. And that's where you want to look at something like the My Apps portal. And that's what you can see here on the screen. This is a portal that the users log into. They can see what apps have been published to them, but then also they can go out and explore additional apps and then through a self-service process, request access to those apps. And that experience here is even integrated with Office 365 so that those users have a consistent way to get access to these apps. So that's pretty cool. And again, it's a one-stop shop here for that user, and it's seamless. And when I click on one of these logos, it launches that app, and I don't get challenged with credentials because I'm already signed in to the My Apps portal. So just something to think about here. Now, what I want to end with is Azure Active Directory. It's an identity solution from Microsoft, but it's not just for Microsoft. Look, they want to make sure that you can connect and secure any app to Azure AD. And so if you're using Office 365, but maybe your organization uses Zoom for meetings, let's integrate with Azure AD and do single sign-on and conditional access and lifecycle management. Maybe it's Dropbox, maybe it's G Suite, maybe it's AWS, maybe it's WebEx. Maybe it's a number of thousands of different apps out there. And then again, on-premises apps as well. Let this be that control plane. So in the next video, we're going to get deeper into conditional access and zero trust, and I'm going to talk about the security benefits that you get when you start to integrate your apps with Azure Active Directory. So stay tuned for the next video.